السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين. صلى الله وسلم على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. أما بعد. This book by al-Hafiz ibn Hajar al-Asqalani rahimahullah ta'ala, from the leading authorities of hadith in his time, and he was from Egypt rahimahullah, and from the A'imma of the Shafi'iyya, and he has lots of famous works in hadith, and for the later scholars of hadith he's considered an authority. So he compiled this book called Bulugh al-Maram min Adillat al-Ahkam, in which he gathered around 1,500 ahadith. Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. How are you? Okay? In which he gathered a large number of ahadith, the key ahadith that the scholars use for their rulings. Yeah? So the books of fiqh, as you know, especially the concise texts in fiqh, usually don't contain evidences. Just the fiqh, just the rulings. This book is the evidences of those rulings, because every ruling that the scholars give has a proof. This is important to understand. So the claim that some people say, especially about the imams of the past, and especially about the imams of the madhahib, there's no proof for this, or there's no proof. That's batil. That's batil. Maybe the proof is not as strong as the proof of other scholars. Okay, maybe that's the case. Not every scholar is correct in everything they say. But to just make blanket statements like they have no proof, this madhab has no proof, that's garbage. Yeah, that's pure garbage. And it's a lack of understanding and a lack of knowledge. Yes, every ruling has a proof from the imams of fiqh. Today, everyone talks about knowledge, so maybe there are people who talk without proof, and that can be said safely because they oppose the ijma' sometimes. But about the imams of the salaf, someone says Ahmad ibn Hanbal, this opinion has no proof. Malik, this opinion has no proof. Shafi'i, Abu Hanifa, this opinion has no. Yeah, that's rubbish. So this book, the author rahimahullah compiled those ahadith, and he goes through the chapters of fiqh: purification, salah, zakah, siyam, hajj, jihad, business transactions, marriage, divorce, the judicial system, etc. Then he ends his book with Kitab al-Jami', the comprehensive book, in which he covers adab, akhlaq, manners, and dhikr and dua, and other kinds of things related to that. Yeah? Which is a nice ending to the book. So that fiqh, because fiqh is one of practice, fiqh is a science of practice that you act upon. Okay, so he ended it with this. So those of you who have this copy, it's a nice copy. It's a good copy. You need to pay attention to the notes, the footnotes of the author. There are lots of benefits in the footnotes of the author. Sometimes the footnotes oppose what the vast majority of scholars are upon, and we'll point that out, inshallah. But it's a useful book anyway. So if you can get this, find a copy of this. It has the Arabic and the English, and then some footnotes which come from Subul al-Salam by Al-Amir San'ani rahimahullah. طيب. Now, we might have said before that the scholars of hadith recommend that a person studies the 40 hadith of Nawawi rahimahullah and perfects them, then studies Umdatul Ahkam min Umdatul Ahkam min Kalami Sayyid al-Anam by al-Maqdisi rahimahullah ta'ala. And thirdly, which has about 400-500 ahadith, all from al-Bukhari and Muslim, throughout the chapters of fiqh. And thirdly, Bulugh al-Maram is the thirdly recommended text after that. Then a person does what they wish. And some people prefer Riyadh al-Salihin after Bulugh al-Maram, and then afterwards you study hadith as you wish. You're a scholar, more or less. If you perfect these three texts, perfect them, and memorize them, and so on, then you've got knowledge more than what the vast majority of people who speak about religion have. As for starting, because you're a little bit, motivated and start straight with Sahih Bukhari and Sahih Muslim, that's a mess. And I've told you about the student who had some motivation to learn, and he said to a teacher, "What do you recommend I memorize? Because I've got good memory and I want to learn." So he said, "Go memorize Sahih Muslim," because he's like Sahih Muslim and used to teach it and so on. So he started memorizing Sahih Muslim with the asanid, with the chains of narration, and he memorized a portion of the book of Salah. He got to the book of Salah. So he's just started Sahih Muslim, got through quite a lot, because it's a big book with the chains of narration. And he afterwards found out and was taught how to study properly, according to a correct method. So he said, "I hold my tongue from cursing that man who advised me to memorize Sahih Muslim. I hold my tongue. I restrain myself from making dua against that man who advised me to memorize Sahih Muslim." That effort he could have put in Sahih Muslim, memorize it. Are we going to do the asanid? Sahih Muslim, everything's authentic. We're going to do memorizing the chains of narration. So he advised him of something terrible that harmed him. This guy could now have covered all of the chapters of fiqh. He knows the ahkam of the religion well, but he went and wasted it in that. So anyways, there's important order to studying. We'll start with the book inshallah, page 461. Kitab al-Jami' Bab al-Adab. This comprehensive book has 6 chapters. The first chapter is Bab al-Adab. عن أبي هريرة رضي الله عنه قال قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم حق المسلم على المسلم 6. The rights of the Muslim upon another Muslim are 6 rights. There are some things, when we're going through this, there are some things that are clear, that you feel I don't need to take a note, and some things add the point in. This is wajib, this is mustahab, this and so on. Point it out so that you're clear on the rulings. Otherwise, hadith without fiqh is useless. Hadith without fiqh is useless and harmful. The rights of one Muslim upon another are 6. إِذَا لَقِيتَهُ فَسَلِّمْ عَلَيْهِ. When you meet him, then give salam. وَإِذَا دَعَاكَ فَأَجِبْهُ. And when he invites you, respond to his invitation. When he invites you, respond to his invitation. وَإِذَا دَعَاكَ فَأَجِبْهُ is referring to all invitations. Okay? All invitations. And we'll come to see the difference in ruling in a second. وَإِذَا اسْتَنصَحَكَ فَانصَحْ. If he seeks advice from you, then give him that advice. وَإِذَا عَطَسَ فَحَمِدَ اللَّهَ فَشَمِّتْهُ. If he sneezes and says Alhamdulillah, then say Yarhamukallah to him. وَإِذَا مَرِضَ فَعُدْهُ. If he becomes ill, then visit him. وَإِذَا مَاتَ فَاتَّبِعْهُ. And if he passes away, then follow him. Meaning, follow his janazah. Follow his janazah. Rawahu Muslim. The word right, haqq, is referred to something that is obligatory or recommended. Generally, it indicates obligation. But at times it can refer to recommendation. Out of these 6 rights, 5 of them are recommended, strongly recommended, and 1 of them is obligatory. Which one is obligatory? That's a fard kifaya, okay. What about fard ayn? لا, because this hadith is not saying respond to the salam. The hadith is saying give him salam to begin with. The second one is wajib according to the majority of scholars. If he invites you to a walima, a wedding specifically, okay, because of other narrations, not because of just this hadith. How could one hadith, why do we distinguish between this and that when it's the same hadith? It doesn't come from this hadith only. Keep this in mind. So when the scholars say X, Y, Z is the ruling and the proof is this hadith, don't limit it to just this hadith as some people think. Because this closes fiqh and makes it a walk in the park. This is the proof. This is just a proof for barakah. Yeah? Just to show there's some sort of basis for it. Otherwise, many proofs are required for a ruling. So the ruling of it being obligatory for a person to respond to a walima, attend a walima, is the only one here that's obligatory upon the individual, if they were given a personal invitation. So if I now said here, brothers, Assalamu alaikum, I'm getting married in a month's time, you're all invited. Now, I'm not getting married in a month's time, and you're not invited. Now in this case, it's not a personal invitation to each person, and so in this case, attending is a sunnah, it's mustahab. Yeah? But if I went, took some of you to the side, Assalamu alaikum, I've got a wedding in a month's time, please make sure you can attend if you do. Now for this person it's wajib, unless they have a good excuse, otherwise they need to attend. Yeah? Otherwise they need to attend.
Would it be sinful not to attend?
Yes, in this case, yes. In the case where I took him away and he had no excuse not to attend, no good reason not to attend, then it would be sinful according to the majority of scholars. Yeah? Giving salam is mustahab. Responding to the salam is wajib. And Ibn Abd al-Barr says there is an ijma' on this, that giving salam is mustahab and responding to the salam is wajib. Yeah? So if you pass by someone, you should give salam. But if they give salam to you, responding is obligatory. If they give salam to you, responding is obligatory. If someone comes in and gives salam to everyone, it is fard kifaya. Fard kifaya means what? If one person does it, it suffices everyone. So if I walk in and say, Assalamu alaikum, and Yasin says, Wa alaikum salam, that's it. You've taken off the burden from everyone. Yeah? Not everyone has to say, Wa alaikum salam, wa alaikum salam. Okay? That's with regards to salam. All other invitations, food invitations, iftar invitations, it's all recommended. It's all recommended. All of it is recommended for you to attend.
With regards to the salam, if the Islam greet everybody like together, can you utter it quietly, or does the person have to give you?
Sorry?
Islam? Does the person have to?
Yes, you respond back to them. Yes, the response is to them. Same with the tashmeet, saying Arhamukallah to the person. Yeah, to the person. Especially the salam to the person. Because the whole reason why responding to the salam is obligatory is because of the disrespect of not responding to someone's salam. Yeah? So Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, and the person says alaikum salam to themselves, what benefit is that? And the person hasn't heard, and they'll be obviously disrespected. Another thing to note, giving salam is the sunnah, not shaking hands. Because some people replaced saying Assalamu alaikum with a handshake or with a wave. Yeah? And they think that suffices. It doesn't suffice, it's not haram. Yeah? It's not haram, but it doesn't suffice for it. Yeah? So you've got people who no one says a word. Yeah? What's recommended and what you're rewarded for is to say Assalamu alaikum. Wa alaikum assalam. The handshake is an additional thing that's not that you can do or you cannot do. Same with just waving. Okay? If they're close enough, say Assalamu alaikum. Yeah? Say Assalamu alaikum as well as wave. طيب. وَإِذَا اسْتَنْصَحَكَ فَانْصَحْ. If he seeks advice from you.
So I've got a question about Islam. Back in uni, we always have this discussion. So for example, though, with regards to sisters that you know, do you recommend walking past saying Assalamu alaikum?
Yeah, so there are a couple of points when it comes to salam. And the first is, there are some other ahadith, we're going to come on to the salam rulings then, but we'll cover them now anyway. When it comes to the salam, there are times where it's not recommended to give salam, such as when a person is reciting Qur'an, and when a person is making dua, and when a person is in salah. And the Hanabila also, and some other scholars, also prefer that this is the madhab of Ahmad, that you shouldn't give salam to the one reciting Qur'an and the one making dua, etc. Similarly, some scholars didn't like that you give salam to the class when a student walks in and the class is already ongoing. They didn't like that because it's a disturbing of the flow of the teacher's speech and it's a disturbing of people's concentration. Also during the khutbah, whilst the imam is giving the khutbah and you walk in, you don't give salam. So these are things that should be common sense. I don't quite comprehend how a person is making dua, their hands are up, and you want to shake hands with them. He's making dua, he's in the middle of dua. Okay? Same with reciting Quran. Leave them alone. Let them finish if you want, let them finish. Stand by them if you're desperate to speak to them. Or not, wait for another time, give salam to them another time. Yeah? So sometimes we need to use our common sense when it comes to following the sunnah. There are times where obviously it's not the right time to do things. Yeah? Someone's in the bathroom, would you give salam? You wouldn't give salam to someone whilst they're using the bathroom. Yeah, so similarly, do you know a hadith which says don't give salam to? You might not even know a single narration about it. But you'd use your intellect and say they're in the bathroom, I'm not going to say it. It's not time to say it. Same with someone making dua and so on. Yeah? طيب. With regards to giving salam to a woman, then many scholars, including the Hanabila and the Malikis, dislike that a young woman gives salam to a young man, or a young man gives salam to a young woman. Yeah? They dislike that. And the Hanafi scholars also similarly don't like the salam of the man to the woman. Yeah? If the Hanabila and Malikiya say if there is some kind of fitna that could go on. So she's an attractive young girl and you're young as well, then there's no need to give salam. Walk past and that's it. There's no need to give salam. As much as sometimes there's a maslahah, there's a good benefit behind it, so that an exception can be made, not an issue. But to make it a norm is not a good idea. Yeah? Make it a norm is not a good idea. So giving salam to a young lady is a no. Same with responding to her sneezing. Don't respond to a young lady. It's nothing to do with disrespect. It's to do with good akhlaq. Yeah? It's to do with good akhlaq. And Ahmad ibn Hanbal, rahimahullah, heard a worshipper and a woman sneezed. And this worshipper said to the lady, Arhamukillah. So Ahmad said, Abidun Jahil, an ignorant worshipper. Yeah, an ignorant worshipper. Because that wasn't an appropriate thing. It's not prohibited. And like we said, there are times where there's a maslahah, there's a good benefit behind giving salam, even to a woman, even if she's young. But, like I said, it's not a sunnah, as some people think, to say it to a woman just as it is with a man. Yeah? Okay. When he seeks for advice, then you give advice. Sincerely give advice. The advice that it's important to not be lazy in this case, because the easy way out is to say, oh, I don't know. If you don't know, you don't know, that's fine. And that's a form of advice. Because if you speak to them and advise them with something you don't know, you've harmed them. You've harmed them. So when you genuinely don't know, you say, I don't know. I wish I knew, but I don't know. And if I speak for the sake of speaking, you're going to be harmed. So sometimes the best form of advice is to be silent and say, I don't know. Because then at least they can go to someone who does know. Or you say, I don't have a clue, but this guy, as far as I know, might have the answer. You direct them. Okay, this is important. So no laziness, but at the same time, no recklessness, where you speak and give advice, all the time without thinking who this person is, without thinking about circumstance and so on. So I was in the bookstore once, and I went to get myself a book. And this person was like, brother, I don't advise you get this book. I advise you get this book instead. That's rubbish advice. Yeah, that's not good advice. Because number one, he's not someone who has much experience in knowledge, and you can tell from the way a person speaks. Number two, how do you know I'm about to study this book with a teacher? My teacher is recommending this book with me. I might be a naive student, doesn't have a clue, and I'm looking forward to studying. Alhamdulillah, I'm going to benefit and work hard. This guy comes and says, brother, don't waste your time with this book. Don't waste your time with this book. Study this book instead. As some ignorant people say, when you come and study fiqh and you come and study fiqh especially. Brother, why are you studying fiqh, the words of men? Study the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. This is the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. The words of these men are the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. Much better than your words. Much better than your words. Yeah? So now a person is studying something and he's put off by people. And these people are قطاع الطرق. Yeah? What's the Arabic for the English? highway robbers. They cut off the roads. They cut off the path for you. You try and benefit and they say to you, brother, this person says this and this person says, did you not hear this guy? He made a statement about XYZ, XYZ. I advise you to stay away from him. Brother, this book is no good. Brother, the Salaf used to study Sahih al-Bukhari. Brother, yeah, don't drive me crazy. Please be quiet. Yeah. This is one of the things that has caused so much harm in the Muslim community. People speaking and advising upon jahl, murakkab, mutlaq, quh, pure ignorance. And so they harm and harm and harm and harm. And really it's harmful because now a person is about to do so many good deeds and you've now driven them away. Oh, I started doing this and now this person's putting me off. I started watching a series on the seerah of the Prophet ﷺ by a speaker who is known to be a beneficial, good speaker, a person of iman and so on. So someone comes and says, brother, this guy is this. Everyone feels the need to speak all the time. Every single thing there's a need to comment. Post a quote from someone. The first comment is always, brother, this guy, what's got to do with the guy? We're talking, you know. Person feels the need, brother, don't listen to this lecture, listen to this instead. He's halfway through the series, he's benefiting so much and you go and cause a problem. Yeah, this comes from a lack of wisdom and a lack of light from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That you don't know when to put the right thing in the right place at the right time. Yeah, so, like I said, that's what we need to keep in mind when it comes to advice. No extremism here, and no extremism with answering with whatever you think, even though you haven't carefully thought things through, and don't be lazy at the same time. وَإِذَا عَطَسَ فَحَمِدَ اللَّهَ فَشَمِّتْ وَإِذَا عَطَسَ when he sneezes and says Alhamdulillah, then you say Yarhamukallah. Some people, as soon as you sneeze, Yarhamukallah. I haven't said Alhamdulillah, I haven't even had the chance to say Alhamdulillah. And the person responds automatically. So that's a mistake that we need to pay attention to. You don't say Yarhamukallah the moment they sneeze. Okay? When he sneezes, فَحَمِدَ اللَّهِ and he says Alhamdulillah, that's when you say Yarhamukallah. And An-Nawawi rahimahullah says, if he doesn't say Alhamdulillah, it is good if you remind him to say it, and then afterwards you say Yarhamukallah. Okay? Afterwards you say Yarhamukallah. وَإِذَا مَرِضَ فَعُدْهُ when he's ill, then visit him. Visit the person who's ill. And a person has to just be wise, of course, in choosing the right time and so on. And it doesn't have to be the closest friend of yours. It can be anyone. Any Muslim, you visit them. Any Muslim, you can visit them. Maybe it's a friend of your friend, maybe it's a friend of your relative, a friend of your brother. Muslim, visit them. Yeah. And again, if it's someone from the opposite gender, then you look at the maslahah. Sometimes there's good in visiting, as was narrated by Aisha radiallahu anha. She used to visit some of the Sahaba when they were ill, and sometimes it's not appropriate to visit, and so you don't visit in that case. Okay. If it's a friend's wife, for example, is that an appropriate visit? That's not an appropriate visit at all. But if it's somebody's a friend of yours, older sister maybe, or maybe it's a wife's friend, I'm not sure about that. If it's it could be any circumstance, whatever the circumstance with you is, you make the judgment. Is it an appropriate thing? If it's an auntie, for example, your friend's mother, okay, your friend, and so on, that's a good thing as well to visit her. And there's no issue there at all. Yeah. وَإِذَا مَاتَ فَاتَّبِعْهُ and if he passes away, then follow his janazah. And praying Salat al-Janazah is what? What's the ruling on it? Fard kifaya, yes? If we have some people pray the janazah, then it's the obligation is lifted, and for everyone else it becomes mustahab, yeah? Recommended. Everyone else becomes mustahab if the obligation is lifted. Same with the burial and so on and that kind of stuff. عن أبي هريرة رضي الله عنه قال قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم انظروا إلى من هو أسفل منكم ولا تنظروا إلى من هو فوقكم. Look at those who are below you, and don't look at those who are above you, more fortunate than you. فهو أجدر ألا تزدروا نعمة الله عليكم. متفق عليه. متفق عليه, agreed upon, means narrated by al-Bukhari and Muslim. Yes, in their Sahih. In the Sahih, narrated by al-Bukhari and Muslim in the Sahih. It's the same hadith, narrated by both al-Bukhari and Muslim. What's the name of al-Bukhari? What's his name? He wasn't called, his mum didn't call him al-Bukhari. Bukhari is just his name from, because of him being from Bukhara. What's his actual name?
Yeah, well,
No. So al-Bukhari's name. May Allah forgive you. Of all the Imam's names, his name is Muhammad ibn Ismail ibn Ibrahim ibn al-Mughira ibn Bardiz al-Bukhari. And this was the first thing that we took in the 40 Hadith of al-Nawawi, for those who were listening. Yeah, the first thing the author says, rahimahullah, he mentions the Hadith of Intention and then says, Rawahu Imam al-Muhaddithin, narrated by the two Imams of Hadith, Abu Abdullah, Muhammad ibn Ismail ibn Ibrahim ibn Mughira ibn Bardiz al-Bukhari. And Muslim, what's his first name? Muslim. Muslim. His first name is Muslim. Muslim ibn al-Hajjaj ibn Muslim al-Naysaburi al-Qushayri. Rahimahullah. The Prophet ﷺ says, don't look at those who are more fortunate than you, and instead look at those who are below you. Why? So that you will not underestimate the favors of Allah. Yeah? And this is an amazing principle. Because when you have an expectation of something, if you expect something, and you don't get that thing, you missing that thing becomes a problem. You feel it, because you were expecting it. I was expecting a nice breakfast. So someone puts on a dry piece of toast for me and water, that's not even breakfast. Yeah? Because you're expecting something. But someone who's not expecting at all, and they see a nice cold glass of water and some bread, alhamdulillah, it's something. And I wasn't expecting anything. And this is really important to have in us. And this is really important to have with relationships with other people. And in marriage as well. The more you expect, if you don't get something back, you'll be upset. I was expecting a thank you at least, and you know, some praising me a bit for what I've done. Yeah. So when you don't get that, you get upset. When you don't get the praise and you get upset. Don't expect in the first place. These are people, human beings. They're weak like everyone else. Yeah. Well, we don't need to expect anything from a human. And this is perhaps one of the major things with marriage as well. A person expects something and doesn't get it back, then it causes a major problem. I expected her to be the most pious woman in the world. I expected her to be a great cook. I expected this. And if it doesn't occur, then you become upset more. Or she expects you to, be in a certain way, and she doesn't get it. She'll also be upset. Yes. So these things are applicable to what? What are they applicable to? Looking at those who are less fortunate than you. Don't look at those who are above you. In terms of the worldly issues. Yes, worldly things. As for knowledge, the akhirah things, then you look at those who are above you. Because above you. Otherwise you'll feel too happy with what you're doing. Yeah? And this is a common excuse, isn't it? Well, at least I'm not doing what he's doing. At least I'm not doing this. At least, who says he's the guideline as to what you should do and what you shouldn't do? You don't look at the one who's lower than you when it comes to good deeds. You look at those who are above you. So you run after them and aim after them. طيب. عن النواس بن سمعان رضي الله عنه قال سألت رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم عن البر والإثم. I asked the Messenger صلى الله عليه وسلم about bir, piety, and ithm, righteousness and sin. فقال البر حسن الخلق. Bir, righteousness, is good character. Righteousness is good character. Your righteousness is from the fruits of good character. Yeah? And the biggest fruit of good character. And this is why the one who you ought to take as a role model, and the one who you ought to take advice from, and the one who you ought to take a fatwa from, is the one with good character. It doesn't matter if he's an imam of the masjid, and he teaches knowledge, and he has a good ability to speak. If he's someone who backbites, has a tendency to talk about other people, doesn't have good manners, he's not worthy of learning from. What are you going to learn from them? Yeah? So this is a really important thing. Character is a very important thing. Character is an exceptionally important thing. And it's the proof that knowledge is actually working and knowledge is actually settling in. If our knowledge is causing us arrogance and boastfulness and pride and bad character and being disrespectful to our parents and being disrespectful to the scholars and those who are teaching us and those who are older than us, this knowledge is not benefiting at all. And your salah and your Quran and so on, it's not bringing about the benefit that it should be bringing about. Yeah? وَالْإِثْمُ مَا حَاكَ فِي صَدْرِكَ وَكَرِهْتَ أَنْ يَطَّلِعَ عَلَيْهِ النَّاسِ أَخْرَجَهُ Muslim. As for sin, it is that thing which you hesitate with in your heart and you don't like that people know about it. You don't like that people know about it. It's a thing that hesitates, that makes you feel discomfort in the heart. What does this mean, discomfort in the heart? Because this could be a problem, this hadith, can't it? Where is the problem with this, the potential problem? Sorry?
If you don't feel discomfort.
Okay, someone might do a clear-cut sin and they don't feel discomfort. Or, what else?
Or if there's a good deed and they feel uncomfortable.
Potentially.
They feel discomfort at things that are fine.
A person could feel discomfort at things that are fine. Now, one of the key problems is that some people couldn't care less about the sins they commit. They're happy, in fact. They're happy. If they commit a sin, they see that as a success, a victory. Okay? I managed to fornicate with this woman, they're not going to be upset and feel guilty about it. That's a success for them. Yeah? That's victory. And they'll boast about it. So now, how can we apply this? And feeling hesitation or feeling irritation at whether what you are doing is sinful or not. Okay? Because when your hesitation is, okay, is this sinful or not? Then it means you actually care about whether it's a sin or not, which is the first step, which means your heart is still alive. And number two, your concern isn't, am I comfortable or am I not comfortable? Your concern is Allah permitting this or not. Is this sinful or is it not sinful? So where it says here, you worry about, or it causes discomfort in your heart, the discomfort or the worry is about whether it's sinful or not. Yeah? وَكَرِهْتَ يَنْطَلِعَ عَلَيْهِ النَّاسِ. And you don't like that people see you do it. That's for the one who has haya, yeah, and the one who cares about what they're doing. Otherwise, again, like we said, some people aren't bothered about whether you catch them doing something or not. And Ibn Mas'ud رضي الله عنه قال قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم إذا كنتم ثلاثة فلا يتناجى اثنان دون الآخر حتى تختلطوا بالناس من أجل أن ذلك يحزنه متفق عليه. When three of you are together, they must not talk privately, ignoring the third one, until you mix with other people. Because otherwise this will cause him grief. So, if there are three people, two of them should not be talking amongst themselves whilst the third is away, when they're in the same sort of place. Unless people start mixing. Okay, so two of you are with another group and this guy is with another group and we have two big groups. No issue there. Okay? But if it's two versus the one, then there's a problem. Regardless of whether you're talking about him or not. It's not about, you talking, it's about the action of talking privately to another person whilst ignoring the third. And included in this is talking in another language that the other third person doesn't understand. Because the illah is the same. Look at the hadith. مِنْ أَجْلِ أَنَّ ذَلِكَ يُحْزِنُهُ. Since that will cause him grief. This is the illah of the hadith. This is the reasoning behind the ruling of the hadith. Wherever this illah is found, the action becomes prohibited. Wherever the illah is not found, it becomes permissible. That causes him grief. Okay? It causes him grief. If you're in a circumstance where the three of you have agreed that you two are going to go over there and he's going to stay here, then of course the ruling doesn't apply. Because the element of causing him grief doesn't exist. Yeah? Doesn't exist. Wherever there's a causing of grief, you need to automatically stop and not do so. And what we have a lot, especially in Birmingham, people are from all sorts of different countries, people talking in their language without the third person. Yeah? This is a problem. You're in the car driving together and two of you are speaking in Urdu, two of you speaking in Arabic, two of you speaking in a language, and this guy doesn't understand what you're talking about. Yeah? Same ruling applies. Even though he can hear what you're saying, he doesn't understand. And so similarly, the element of causing him grief is going to exist. Yeah? Why are you talking another language? You speak English. Why suddenly you change, especially when there's a sudden change? Everyone's happily speaking in English, suddenly two of them speak in their own language. Why? What's this change? Of course that's going to cause grief. And so the ruling applies. Yeah, the ruling applies. Three, of course, even more so. If there's 5 of you in the car, all 4 of you are speaking a language, of course the ruling applies even more so. Yeah, and this is why one of the most important things when learning hadith is to learn the fiqh of hadith, to learn the wisdom and the understanding, sound understanding of these hadith. Don't just learn that one statement. And if you become so cold and rigid in your understanding, you'll take this hadith, 3 of you are together, 2 must not talk privately, ignoring the other. Okay. Yeah, and you learn this one hadith rigidly. So someone comes and says to you, okay, what if there are 3 people? I don't know, the hadith says 2. Alright, so if you understood the hadith, you could have easily applied that. Yeah? Or what if they're talking together but in a different language? I don't know, the hadith just says ignoring the other. If you had understood the hadith, you'd be able to apply it to many circumstances. And so this is really important. Yeah, otherwise we're going to be worse than the Zahiris without any understanding of, with the meaning behind the hadith and, applying things not the way they should be applied. وعن ابن عمر رضي الله عنهما قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم لا يقيم الرجل من مجلسه ثم يجلس فيه ولكن تفسحوا وتوسعوا متفق عليه. A man must not make another man get up from his place and then occupy it himself, but you should spread out and make room. This is really important, that there needs to be a genuine concern for those around us, whether it's inside the masjid or whether it's in a place like here or wherever it is, on public transport, in a car. Number one, you don't take the seat that belongs to someone else. Yeah? As some people, if there's a crowded place and there's one chair and some people are on the floor, this guy's waiting for the guy to get up. As soon as he's up, it's my seat now. It's not your seat. It's not your seat. If he's got up temporarily and he's going to return, it's still his seat. Still his seat. Yeah, so you don't tell them to get up in order to you sit down and so on. And like we said, this applies around. وَلَكِنْ تَفَسَّحُوا وَتَوَسَّعُوا. Rather, spread out and make room. That's really important. In the khutbah, I know sometimes the khutbah can be long, and so you want to get in the most comfortable position ever. But there are lots of people, it's packed out. So how can you sit out with your feet like this? Or how can you sit out, with your to the sides like this? You have to make room. You have to make room, and even if that means you have to sit slightly closer together, allowing space for others is more important. This is important to understand. طيب. عن ابن عباس رضي الله عنهما قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم إذا أكل أحدكم طعاما فلا يمسح يده حتى يلعقها أو يلعقها متفق عليه. One of you eats, he mustn't wipe his hand. Now this متفق عليه, agreed upon. This refers to after eating. In one narration, the Prophet ﷺ says, because a person doesn't know where the barakah in food is. And barakah is something that is obviously unseen. Barakah is something that is unseen. And so these things relating to barakah and the unseen are taken as they come from the words of the Messenger ﷺ and from the words of Allah, because they are unseen. As for being certain this is barakah, that's not correct. Yeah, someone sat here, and so therefore there must be barakah there. No, there's no way. I saw an Audi being sold once, an Audi Q7 being sold for a huge price, and one of the qualities of this car was that a certain sheikh regularly sits on the car. Yeah, so as though there is a blessing on that. Who told you there's blessing? If Allah or His Messenger told us there's blessing here, like in Ma'at Zamzam, like in Medina, like in a certain place, then fine, we accept it. But for you to make that judgment, he's pious, so there must be... Okay, and it's not a physical thing that if you're going to sit here, you're going to touch the barakah. And it's not a physical thing. Yeah, it's not a physical thing. It's something Allah puts blessing in. Allah puts blessing in. Yeah, you can't decide and judge and physically, so you can carry the barakah. Now you take the barakah and share it with the rest of the brothers and so on. And during Hajj, we had in Jabal al-Ruma, the mount on which the Messenger ﷺ commanded people the archers to stay and not to come down. So some of the people were taking, you know how people are, they take sand and they take the sand and rocks and so on from the mountain. And so one of the brothers with us said, "Brother, why are you taking this?" He said, "I'm taking it for barakah." He said, "If anything, this mountain is cursed because it's a mountain on which the Prophet ﷺ was disobeyed on. And so how do you know that there is barakah?" So, like we said, barakah isn't a physical thing that can be seen. So the Prophet ﷺ says until he licks his hands, which means that licking the hands after eating is fine, and even wiping the hands is fine as well. And he says here, "أو يلعقها," meaning even if another person, this is a romantic shot that you can try, or even if another person licks it, such as one's wife, or they do the same to their wife, and maybe you'll get bonus points with that romantic strike there. So the point there is just permissible. It doesn't mean it's something that's obviously is going to be spread amongst people. Nobody does that, but permissibility, and if it's to be done with someone like your wife, then there's no issue. عن أبي هريرة رضي الله عنه قال قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم يسلم الصغير على الكبير والمار على القاعد والقليل على الكثير متفق عليه في رواية لمسلم والراكب على الماشي. So there are certain people or certain circumstances where you ought to give salam to another person. And all of this is in the Sahihain, al-Bukhari and Muslim, even the final edition. So the author says here, وَفِي رِوَايَةٍ لِمُسْلِمٍ وَالرَّاكِبُ عَلَى الْمَاشِي, right next to it, and it's in al-Bukhari also. So it's not actually in Muslim only. It's in al-Bukhari also. The young should greet the old. The young should greet the old. The word old, in Arabic, the word kabir, as in the hadith, this refers to big, whether older in age or whether bigger in status. That means if a sheikh passes by you ought to give salam to them. Yeah? So the sheikh passes by, we ought to give salam to that person. Or someone older than us, we ought to give salam to someone older. And the one passing by should greet the one sitting. The one passing by should greet the one sitting. And the smaller group should greet the larger one. And the one who is riding should greet the one who is walking. These are all recommended in terms of order. So if the old one greets the younger one, or the sitting greets the walking, that's okay. Okay, it's fine. But it's more of a recommendation for you, walking or younger, to give salam to the other person. Okay? طيب. وعن علي رضي الله عنه قال قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم يجزئ عن الجماعة إذا مروا أن يسلم أحدهم ويجزئ عن الجماعة أن يرد أحدهم رواه أحمد والبيهقي. Some of the scholars consider this hadith Hasan, like Shaykh al-Albani, and others consider it slightly weak. And either way, the ruling of the hadith is applicable. And this is a lesson in that the weakness of a hadith, according to no scholar ever, does the weakness of a hadith mean the invalidation of the ruling. This is very important to understand. Because some people, someone's just forwarded me a WhatsApp message. Let's check the authenticity of the hadith. Authenticity is weak. Weakened by Shaykh al-Albani. Because his tasheeh is now widespread and common, rahimahullah. And so he says, Shaykh al-Albani, not knowing, maybe there are other scholars who consider it authentic. That's the first thing. But let's assume they agreed it's weak. Even then, Does that mean the ruling is wrong? No. Doesn't mean the ruling is weak. There are some rulings that are weak, and the scholars agree. There are some ahadith that are weak, and the scholars agree that the ahadith are applicable. The ruling that comes from the hadith is applicable. And one example is the third hadith in this book, Bulugh al-Maram, of if water changes its taste or its smell or its color, then it is no longer to be used for tahara. It is weak, and the scholars agree it's weak. And the scholars agree that that's the ruling that's applicable. Okay? So don't be quick to judge like this. See, this is weak, ruling must be wrong. No. Yeah? No. Especially on things that are, fada'il, extra good deeds, extra acts of worship, like extra dhikr, if the meaning is sound, and extra acts of worship, then there's no issue. Yeah? Like, for example, what we recently had, the night of the 15th of Sha'ban, some of the narrations, many of the narrations in it are weak. But a group of scholars took with it. And so in this case, you don't become aggressive and say, no, this is wrong. Let people, they're doing good deeds. We're going to stop them from doing good deeds. Let them do good deeds. They're not doing something that opposes the ijma' of the scholars. And they're doing good deeds. So that's it. Yeah, there's no problem there. طيب. So this hadith here is quite clear. When people are passing by, it's enough if one of them offers the salam on their behalf. And it's enough for those who are sitting if one of them replies. So giving the salam, as we said, it's a mustahab, it's recommended. And responding to the salam is a fard kifaya. It's sufficient if one person does it. أبي هريرة رضي الله عنه قال قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم لا تبدأوا اليهود والنصارى بالسلام وإذا لقيتموهم في طريق فاضطروهم إلى أضيقه أخرجه مسلم. Do not initiate greeting the Jews or the Christians with salam, and when you meet them on the road, force them to its narrowest side. Rawahu Muslim. Now, this hadith, the ijma' is upon the second part of the hadith not being as it is apparently. Yeah? So there's ijma' that it is not obligatory as the apparent meaning of the hadith. If you walk next to a non-Muslim on the road, that you push them to the side. So this wasn't narrated from the Prophet ﷺ, nor was it narrated from the companions that they did that. Okay, what is meant here is belittling yourself for the sake of the Jews or the Christians. Belittling yourself for the sake of the Jews and the Christians, as we see in maybe some countries. A white person walks by, and if you're white and blonde, you're automatically more special. And therefore, we need to give space, everyone stand up, and everyone sit down, okay, because this guy is from Europe, they're so advanced, mashallah, and so on and so on. Yeah, it's this kind of thing that, and some narrations from the Salaf would be a bit tough when it comes to, for example, giving the salam to the Jews and the Christians. And this is the wisdom behind it, okay? Otherwise, it's obligatory to show ihsan and goodness to the kafir as well as the Muslim. Yeah, it's obligatory. But on the condition, or at the same time, it's important to keep in mind the element of pride in your religion. Because when pride in your religion is taken away, this weakens you, it weakens your iman, weakens your heart, and it weakens the Muslims. If they feel that someone else is, how can we feel lower than someone else? We're upon guidance, they're upon jahl and misguidance. How can we feel that someone else is better than us? It's amazing. It really is amazing. And what this does is slowly you start to have less iman in your religion and less and less and less until you go astray. Yeah, so don't be short-sighted when it comes to these narrations. And obviously don't misunderstand them in an extreme way. And at the same time don't belittle them altogether and say, what the heck? How can we? No, there's a meaning behind this, but it's not like we said as is apparent. And this shows, of course, the importance of being a faqih of hadith, like I've said many times before. Having understanding of hadith, not picking up a book of hadith. Well, the apparent meaning of the hadith says, force them to the narrowest road side. So as far as I know, force them to the narrowest side. Yeah. That's not how hadith works. That's not how knowledge works. And you think you're defending the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, and you're not. You're not. That's not how things are understood. You always understand it with how the initial narrators of these ahadith understood it. Those who practiced these ahadith understood it. Like the companions and the tabi'een and the imams of hadith. And as for giving salam first, initiating, you give salam first. Most of the scholars say you don't give salam first. And Abdullah ibn Abbas and a group of other companions say you give salam. You can't give salam. And a group of other scholars, and this is the Shafi'i scholars saying this, say you don't, and a group of other scholars also, you don't give salam. The salam is what you don't initiate. As-salamu alaykum, that's what you don't initiate. Don't start the salam. As for a greeting, that's not a salam. And so you greet them as you do. So now, for example, hello, good morning, how are you? Everything okay? That's a greeting, there's no issue in that at all. Al-Awza'i and Ibrahim. Who's Ibrahim? When we say Ibrahim, who are we referring to? When the scholars say this was narrated by Ibrahim. When they say it was narrated from Al-Hasan and Ibrahim. Who's Al-Hasan? Al-Basri. Hasan Al-Basri, from the fuqaha of the tabi'een. And if they say Ibrahim Al-Nakha'i, who was from the imams of Kufa. So when they say Ibrahim, they mean Ibrahim and Al-Awza'i. And a group of other tabi'een say, if there is a benefit, then you should do it. Which essentially means, now, this is the relied upon fatwa in our time, especially for those in non-Muslim countries. Yeah? That a person greets others, and especially if there is a good benefit behind them. They're talking about salam when there's a benefit. So imagine just a greeting of hello and good morning. Yeah? There's no doubt that's okay. Initiating the Jews and the Christians, again, it goes back to the issue of not having too much, not raising them too much, and then belittling us. That's why at times this would be applicable. In certain circumstances, it could become applicable. For everyone here in the Western world, what's applicable is the opinion of Ibn Abbas and Ibrahim and the Shafi'is and Al-Awza'i. And that is, where was Al-Awza'i? Where did he live? He was the faqih of Sham. Yeah, he was the faqih of Sham, rahimahullah. And he was born only a few years before Malik, 88 years after Hijrah. So he was the same era as Imam Malik ibn Anas. طيب, final hadith and then we'll end. وعنه أن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم قال إذا عطس أحدكم فليقل الحمد لله. When one of you sneezes, you should say Alhamdulillah. وَلْيَقُلْ لَهُ أَخُوهُ يَرْحَمُكَ اللَّهُ. And his brother should say to him يَرْحَمُكَ اللَّهُ. وَلْيَقُلْ فَإِذَا قَالَ لَهُ يَرْحَمُكَ اللَّهُ فَلْيَقُلْ يَهْدِيكُمُ اللَّهُ وَيُصْلِحْ بَالَكُمْ. And in response you say يَهْدِيكُمُ اللَّهُ وَيُصْلِحْ بَالَكُمْ. رواه البخاري. This hadith is very clear. So Alhamdulillah, he responds and says يَرْحَمُكَ اللَّهُ. When you say Alhamdulillah, then you respond back and say يَرْحَمُكَ اللَّهُ. And there is no harm in saying يَغْفِرُ اللَّهُ لَنَا وَلَكُمْ instead of يَرْحَمُكَ اللَّهُ. And that was authentic. That's the opinion of Abu Hanifa. And Malik and Shafi'i say you can say that as well. You can say Yarhamukumullah or you can say Yaghfirullahu lana wa lakum. Either is it. And what we have here is Yarhamukallah. Yahdikumullah wa sahbalakum. Yes, sorry. Yeah, so the response is Yahdikumullah wa sahbalakum. Or the response can be Yaghfirullahu lana wa lakum. May Allah forgive you and us. Yes. And we'll continue. I was hoping to get through this whole chapter, but time went by a bit quicker than I thought. So next lesson, inshallah, we'll continue from where we left on. Off from Allahu a'lam, sallallahu ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa alihi wa sahbihi.
Is that next week, though?
Next week? Yes, inshallah, next week. We'll make it 5:15 if that suits people, so we can have a little bit longer. By the time we settle and so on and we go for salah, we can save that time.
What is a group of Muslims and non-Muslims?
Yes, the person gives salam. Give salam to everyone and greet everyone, there's no issue. If there's a group of Muslims and non-Muslims, you can say Assalamu alaikum. And that was narrated from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And you can greet otherwise with other than salam if you wish.